Blessings. I come today because I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the action at Synod Assembly. But first I just wanted to reflect a little on the life of Christ and his ministry. You know, throughout Jesus' ministry, he reached out to those who were on the outside. When people established borders of what was acceptable and not, it always seemed that Jesus was reaching out beyond those borders. He ate with sinners and tax collectors. He healed the child of a Syrophoenician woman. He touched lepers. He held up a Samaritan who had been rejected by the Jewish community as a model for good behavior. And virtually any time someone drew a line in the sand and said, those people over there aren't acceptable, when they looked over, Jesus was standing with those people. And in the night before Jesus was taken to his death, he prayed with the disciples in John's Gospel that those people, that they could be one as the Father and the Son are one. In our society today, far too often people feel excluded, separated out. We're right now as a church and as a whole nation in a conversation on race and racism and what lives matter. We're in a conversation about wealth and poverty and the separation between the wealthiest and the poorest. We're in conversation around sexism and gender bias and discrimination of people in the LGBT community. The Synod Mission Committee and the Synod Council took this to heart and drafted a statement of welcome that defines how we see as a synod, how we see ourselves. It was adopted in May 19th in the Synod Council meeting. The statement reads, in the Lower Susquehanna Synod of the ELCA, we feed the hungry as we have been fed by Christ. We welcome all who are seeking God's love and grace. We welcome all because God welcomes all, regardless of race or culture, sexual orientation, gender identity, or relationship status. We welcome all without regard to addictions, physical or mental health, imprisonment, socioeconomic circumstances, or anything that too often divides us. Our unity is in Jesus Christ. At Synod Assembly in the beginning of June, the Harrisburg Conference brought a resolution. It read, resolved that the Lower Susquehanna Synod become a Reconciling in Christ Synod, an RIC Synod, by requesting recognition by Reconciling Works that our statement of welcome is inclusive of all people. It was adopted by a large margin by the Assembly. And so Secretary McKee, following the instructions of the Assembly, requested that we receive recognition that we are a Reconciling in Christ Synod from the Reconciling Works organization. But this has led to some questions by folks that are not familiar with all this language. One of the questions is, who is Reconciling Works? Well, they're a Lutheran organization founded in 1974 that works with the Lutheran Church in Canada and the ELCA to encourage the full inclusion of all people in the life of the Lutheran Church. They strive to dismantle injustice based on sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, race, ethnicity, and other categories through a Lutheran lens. So what does it mean that we're reconciling in Christ? It means that our welcome statement reflects the values that this organization holds to be important, that we are aligned with others who stand with those who have been excluded from society and at times excluded from the church. So what does this mean then for our congregations? Well, our statement of welcome and our status as a synod speaks to who we are as we work together as a synod. Because our congregations are interdependent partners in ministry, the reconciling in Christ status does not automatically extend to the congregations. Now, a number of our congregations have themselves become reconciling in Christ. Congregations themselves then may want to determine if discerning a welcoming statement would help establish their identity in their community, particularly for those who have not been felt welcome at church. There's been some questions about what does this have as implications for our 2009 social statement on human sexuality, gift, and trust? Well, we as a church have always welcomed all people, including those in the LGBTQ community. We're opposed as a church, as it's said in the statement in 2009, to all forms of harassment and discrimination, and our statement from 2009 calls for all congregations and members to welcome, care for, and support same-gendered couples and their families, and to advocate for their legal protection. But what implications does this have on same-gender relationships? We recognized in the statement in 2009 and within our synod and the church that people, in their understanding the gospel, see same-gendered relationships in different ways. But being welcoming does not change that we accept our differences of understanding of same-gendered marriages. Each congregation needs to discern how they will minister and care for those that are in same-gendered relationships and marriages. This action by our assembly states clearly what is true for us as a synod, that we welcome all, because God welcomes all, regardless of race or culture, sexual orientation, gender identity, or relationship status. We welcome all, without regard to addictions, physical or mental health, imprisonment, socioeconomic circumstances, or anything that too often divides us. Our unity is in Christ. That's who we are as a church and the people of God.